The Drop Book Series by 7 Drops, based on the writings of Luisa Piccarreta. A drop in the immense sea of the divine will. Page 23. When you do an act in the divine will, the angels carry that act to the throne of the Father. The Father is infinitely pleased with this act, and he sends a wave out over all creation. The blessed in heaven and the angels receive a greater glory. The souls in purgatory receive a wave of relief, and all of creation receives a blessing. Since all acts in the divine will are divine, one act cannot be more divine than another. Yet God will respond differently to acts done in the divine will. The act of cleaning your room in the divine will cause the Father to send out a wave and glory of grace. Whereas receiving Holy Communion in the divine will pours out a sacramental grace on all souls. It is amazing to think that if you go to communion today in the divine will, even the worst criminals are given a sacramental grace that they never asked for or knew they were getting. They might just wake up feeling a little less rotten and not understand why. However, it is up to each individual to respond to the grace that is poured out upon them. Many will not respond at first because they are caught in their lives of sin, but if they are continually bombarded with the wave of unmerited graces caused by many acts done by those living in the divine will, eventually some will respond. You can see how this wave of grace caused by acts done in the divine will can change the world. The prophets in the Bible have foretold a great era of peace that the world will experience for 1,000 years. The gift of the divine will is God's plan to usher it in. Not only will the divine will purify us, but the gift will purify the world at the same time and bring about the completion of God's kingdom on earth. In addition to your acts done in the divine will, prayers in the divine will help usher in God's kingdom. Like all your acts, these prayers become divine as if Jesus himself prayed them. Rounds are prayers in the divine will. The purpose of rounds is to give God the glory which is due to him. In order to understand rounds, you need to know that when God created each person, he created a vast number of acts for that person to do in the divine will. These acts exist in eternity, even if the person chooses not to do them. So every person has a body and a soul, but also acts waiting for him to possess. When the gift of the divine will was lost, man could only take possessions of these created acts with the human will. This was not God's plan. This did not give God glory. So with the use of the divine will, we have to go back in our rounds and take possession of all those acts done by other people for the last 6,000 years, then give them to the Father for his glory as the divine gifts he should have received. This is no small job, except for Jesus, Mary, Luisa, and the sons and daughters of the divine will, that's you. All acts since the fall in the garden were done in the human will, with the human will. Even a good act done by a saint in the human will doesn't give God the glory he is due. Also, there are acts which were never done because the people who were supposed to take possession of them chose to do bad acts instead. These undone acts still exist and are suspended in time. We have to take possession of all these too and bring them to the divine will. To give to the Father. Bring them into the divine will to give to the Father. With these rounds, We are working to give God the divine gifts he missed out on for the last 6,000 years. You can do these rounds on your own. If you are at Mass, you can take possession of all the acts of the people mentioned in the readings. If it is a saint's feast, you can take possession of all the acts of that saint. If you are mowing the lawn in the divine will, you can take possession of all the acts of people who ever worked at their home. Bring everything into the divine will. Never pray for yourself. You are in the divine will. God will take care of you and all of your concerns. Always pray for all souls, past, present, and future. This is the greatest thing you can do to help others. A good way to go back through history and do rounds is to use one of the books containing Luisa's rounds of creation. Not only does she go through the 7 days of creation, but she recounts the events in the Garden of Eden, the Old Testament, Jesus and Mary's lives, and the Church. If you read these, you are doing the rounds with Luisa. Of course, all of the acts done by Jesus, Mary, Adam and Eve, before Adam and Eve sinned, were done in the divine will. But we can repeat these acts with the use of the divine will, make them our own, and give them to the Father again for his glory. God will be very pleased to receive these acts again and again. He will respond with wave after wave of grace. You can also take possession of God's very own act of creation and give it back to him for his greater glory. There is another kind of round that helps all creatures give God glory. It was God's plan that Adam and Eve and their offspring were to act as the priests for all creation. With our voice, the birds, animals, rocks, water, stars, and all creatures were to glorify the Father. But with the loss of the divine will, man was no longer able to act as priest. He was the only creature no longer living in the divine will. So how could he be the priest for all creation? Now with the return of the gift, we can take our position as priests. In these rounds, we put our voice into the birds, water, trees, and have them give love, praise, and glory to the Father. Except for man, the rest of creation does not have a voice to do this on its own. At the most, creatures display their beauty, strength, immensity, splendor, as they reflect the qualities of God and give him glory this way. All creation, from the greatest star to the smallest seed, has been waiting 6,000 years for the sons and daughters of the divine will to help them fully glorify God.